sensing this danger. This is the greatest showman! He is floating on air now! He's going to send it back. Gone. Bang! Down he goes. They love it!
Hello and welcome to the NEMBC's Multicultural AFL Footy Show. I am Vanessa Gatica. It was a very eventful week in the AFL. Thursday night, St Kilda triumphed over Carlton, and on Friday evening, Essendon beat the Magpies. But in both games, the umpiring was inconsistent due to the new interpretation of the prior opportunity rule. The league was again forced to alter its fixture when Victoria was deemed to be coronavirus active, and the AFL teams from other states could not play in Victoria, or Victorian sides could not play in other states without everyone quarantined. As a result, 6 Victorian teams, Carlton, St Kilda, Western Bulldogs, Richmond, Essendon and North Melbourne, have camped in Queensland. 2 teams in Sydney, namely Hawthorn and Melbourne, and Perth will host the Cats and Collingwood, while Victoria, the spiritual home of the AFL, will not host any games. I'm joined by my 2 co-panelists this evening, Javier Sincang and Gabriel D'Angelo, as well as George Grosios, our resident expert. Hello, guys.
Hello, Vanessa.
Hello.
Hi, Vanessa, gentlemen.
Welcome, George.
Thank you.
Thursday evening, the Blues, on a 5-day turnaround, playing at home, were beaten by a determined St Kilda side, while on Friday, the Bombers defeated Collingwood. TV commentators from both those games were critical of the new interpretation of the prior opportunity rule. West Coast found form to beat the Swans, and Geelong at home trounced the Gold Coast Suns. Gabriel, your comments, please.
Firstly, I thought Gold Coast, we weren't really expecting them to beat Geelong in Geelong, but I thought they did a really good job, that they were actually there or thereabouts. Like, they almost gave Geelong a bit of a fight, but in that last quarter it was all Geelong. And of course, what happened to Rao, it's a tragedy really, because he's been having such a good season, but I'm sure we'll go into depth about that a little bit later. But the Gold Coast Suns, I thought that they could have some pride in the fact that they were so close against Geelong at their home ground. Geelong with all the superstars, Ablett and Selwood in particular, celebrating their milestone games. It was always going to be a tough call. In terms of West Coast and Sydney, I thought that West Coast really surprised me, because they've been really disappointing these past few weeks. Sydney, they should have won that game. They were just so dominant from the beginning, and the way they just blew that lead, I couldn't believe it. I thought that Sydney were going to be a little bit more superior to West Coast, because they got such good running men to really do some damage, but they were really,
I think
really bad.
someone probably told West Coast only 2 games to go before we head back.
Oh well, yeah, that's
that probably inspired them.
That's probably true. But just briefly on the Carlton and St Kilda game, I thought that, obviously I'm happy that St Kilda won, also to annoy our director, but the way that Carlton played at the beginning was really disappointing. I was expecting much, much more from them, but once Cripps started to find the ball, he was untouchable. They really couldn't suppress him. He was just such a ball man. He was just such a good player. But Carlton were disappointing, even though St Kilda won, and the Butler again had another fantastic game. So, yeah, that was pretty much my observations for those particular games.
Yeah, I believe St Kilda, I think they're just proving the point that you've been as a team. I think at the moment Carlton is relying too heavily on Cripps at the moment. He needs to perform well for the others that can perform. So that's probably making it hard for them at the moment. And with the West Coast, it's lucky that they win because the way things are going at the moment, especially for them, that would have been disaster if they lost that one as well.
Yeah.
Gabriel, you touched on earlier when Matt Rowell got injured, that deflated the Gold Coast Suns.
It really did.
Because they started very, very brightly that first quarter. They really served it up to Geelong, I thought.
Yeah.
And of course, Matt Rowell got pounded into the dirt, and we knew that was always going to happen. They were always going to play quite aggressively and really make Rowell earn every single kick. And of course, as we now know, he's dislocated his shoulder. So I think you could see the Gold Coast Suns players just visibly drop their heads afterwards when he walked off.
Yeah.
And that's a problem that Gold Coast are going to have to fix, because they do have some good players like Tuke Miller. He's a good player.
And
I
King.
think he's great. And
They
King.
got through the draft.
You're exactly right, yeah. The other King's brother, the twin. So, yeah, they do have some good players, but they have to learn to play without him, without Raul.
Yep, and they need to believe in themselves. They can do very well.
Exactly. The Western Bulldogs got doggies 3 in a row. That was amazing. Trashed the rules. Brisbane destroyed Port Adelaide. Freo did the number on the Crows, while the Tigers found form to beat Melbourne, but at a price as 3 of their stars ended up injured. And the GWS Giants humbled Hawthorn. What did you make of those 5 games, Javier?
Well, I believe a Hawthorn game, I think I expected them to perform a bit better, but I think they found their mojo back, GWS Giants. The way they played, everyone sort of knew what their role is, and their forwards didn't let their midfield down. And everywhere there was a play like you could see that they're there for a purpose or so. So it was a very good game for GWS Giants to win. The way we are saying that before that they might have not have got this year, but the way that they played this game, that was just superb. The way their forwards played, and as far as doggies are concerned, oh man, that's awesome the way they're playing at the moment. The good thing was that they achieved that win without Aaron Norton, and Josh Bruce finally got
Amazing.
the role.
6 goals, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Six
So that's what he's there for, to like sort of crack the pack, get the ball down, and then kick a bag of goals as well. So finally he did that. So this is a very good sign for Bulldogs to come. But moving to the hub, and then how that's going to affect doggies, that's going to be a different one. We don't know about that, how that's going to affect with their scoring skills, because we've seen that Bulldogs have that tendency of doing way more behinds than the actual goals. And with the Freo, well, that was their chance to win one game, and they did that. That's pretty good. Now they really have to prove that it wasn't just the one game. They need to come up. I believe Nat Fyfe might be back, but let's see. They can't rely on him anyway, because the win was without Nat Fyfe. They would have given them some sort of confidence in themselves, and hopefully they can carry on that confidence. And with Brisbane and Port Adelaide, I mean that could have been a more closer game, but Brisbane are just too good at the moment, and there seems to be they are invincible at the moment. So let's see what happens. And Richmond finally got into the winning ways.
Maybe I watched the Hawthorn GWS game. Being a Hawthorn supporter, I was hoping that the Hawks would get up. It was always going to be a difficult assignment in Sydney, but Hawthorn did not do themselves any favours with the way they disposed of the ball. They butchered it. They went by hand too many times. They went backwards, sideways. Their system up forward was terrible.
Yeah.
And Alistair Clarkson needs to seriously address his forward line setup. Didn't help that Jonathan Patton didn't play. The most ridiculous excuse for an injury. He burnt his foot cooking salmon in the lead up to the game. So it's just mind-blowing, staggering that a player would miss a game for spilling oil on his foot.
It was a heavy salmon.
Yes, it must be.
It was probably Paul salmon that he spilled.
That's right. The fish that John West rejects, perhaps. But Hawthorn's ball movement was terrible, and they're going to need to address that very, very quickly if they want to get back on the winners list.
Yeah.
And that's taking nothing away from GWS, of course, because their forward line functioned a lot better than Hawthorn's.
At least there were a few holding the ball decisions. Might have made Alistair Clarkson happy or not. That's a different story. But there were
Well,
few
the free kick count did go against Hawthorn, but I'm not going to use that as an excuse for Hawthorn's terrible performance. But it's something the umpires department will need to have a look at.
Yeah. But there were some terrible performance. Look, I don't want to take away from Richmond and the Western Bulldogs' performance, because they both won very well. But there was this sense of, they're coming back now. Like the Bulldogs are back and now the Tigers are back. I'm still not 100% convinced. I don't want to take away from their performance, their win. But I don't know, are they really back, or is it only because North Melbourne and Melbourne were so bad? I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, well, I suppose it's a bit of both. That's why I said that it's going to be a good test from now onwards when they go in the hub, and that's when it's like really you could see how the team's going to perform.
Probably more so the Bulldogs are back more than Richmond.
And Melbourne, I'm not sure what's wrong with them. They've got like good backline. They've got the middle. It is just that the inaccuracy towards the goal. They had about like how many times they've entered the 50s, but in the other team's 50, but they can't score. So they're missing the most important stat. Yeah. So they got Jack Lever at the back. They've got Stephen May is back, and they got Petrarca at the front. I mean, in the middle we know that all those Brayshaws and Oliver as well, and I don't know what's wrong with Melbourne. Seriously, don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what's wrong with Melbourne. They can't kick.
Yeah,
When you look at how many times they actually turn the ball over.
Yeah.
Stephen May,
Yeah.
you mentioned Petraka. There were a number of other players. Hunt was one of their chief,
Salam as well.
chief ball wasters. Gary Lyon on SEN, his program actually was savage in his criticism of his former team, and rightly so.
Yeah.
Thanks, boys. Don't go anywhere as we'll be back after the break with reviews, previews, and changes to the round 6 fixture. Welcome back to the panel. Round 6 opening game on Thursday night. Geelong take on Brisbane Lions at the SCG. Friday night, we'll see Collingwood play host to Hawthorn from the Giants Stadium. On Saturday, Fremantle plays St Kilda at Metricon on the Gold Coast. And at the Gabba, West Coast and Adelaide go head-to-head. Gabriel, I will let you open this discussion.
Well, I just can't wait to see Geelong versus Brisbane Lions. I think that's going to be potentially the match of the round. It's going to be really good to see like the old guard versus the new guard, because the way that Brisbane playing at the moment is just such an amazing brand of footy. We all thought like last year, Brisbane, breath of fresh air, they came out of nowhere, they are fantastic. But this time around, they've actually stepped it up a notch. And you've got Cameron, Hipwood, McStay, who was sensational. Like the way he played last week against Port Adelaide, he had just had the ball on a string. I think that this one is going to be a really good encounter. I think that Brisbane, because of what's been going on with this crazy corona situation, that they're lucky that most of their games have been in Queensland, and we're still yet to see them play outside of their comfort zone, and we'll see how they really are in that regard. But I think that being at a neutral venue at the SCG, I think that the Brisbane Lions, the way they're going, I think that they're just a little bit better than Geelong at the moment, who have been a bit unconvincing at some points here and there. Their loss against Carlton, their narrow win against Melbourne, who haven't really been that good. So for me, I think that the Brisbane Lions are going to start the round with a great win.
Yeah, I'd probably echo the same thing that Brisbane Lions, like they're going to be playing very fast sort of footy, and I believe Geelong is like sort of slowing things down a bit as well. And then we have all those other factors. Sometimes we see the way Geelong plays, like doesn't look like it shouldn't look like that, but it looks like sometimes they go for free kicks or something like that, and then they play that kind of a game. Whereas Brisbane Lions are, as far as they are concerned, they are like up a notch from where they were, and their confidence is super high at the moment. Yeah. You could probably name their whole team the way they are playing at the moment, that everyone sort of getting into their roles, and it was good that other than Cameron, they were still able to play that good as well. Like he wasn't a big contributor, others were sort of contributing in that as well.
Zorko was injured, it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah. But with the Hawthorn and Collingwood, I think that's going to be a good game too. Collingwood they need to sort out their on-field and off-field issues at the moment. So I'll be really surprised if they can come up against the Hawthorn in a very good mental state, because at the moment, Alistair Clarkson, he's got a lot of point to prove with all the media sort of going around him as well, and then he has to come up with those answers. And I'm pretty sure in this game, he will come up with the answers, and it's going to be Hawthorn on the top for me.
So you're tipping Hawthorn to beat Collingwood, Habir?
Yes.
Well, of course, Collingwood don't have still Sidebot, and they don't have Jordan De Goey either, because there's been controversy with his on-field antics, and he's had to obtain a COVID test. So we're waiting for those results. It's just been a really unsettling period for Collingwood lately. They started off the resumption quite well. They were the form side, and in the last 2 weeks, the wheels have fallen off. I'm hoping Hawthorn, as a Hawthorn supporter, that they can bounce back very, very quickly, Vanessa.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think they can. They can. And Jeremy Howe's another big out for Collingwood. So, Collingwood on and off the field, they've just been, and of course Eddie Maguire, he hasn't really helped things as well. But Collingwood have been really disappointing these last few weeks.
And also I'll see how much details Eddie puts out for the Collingwood at this stage. So we'll see about that. And then St Kilda, I think that's going to be a easy game for them, I suppose. But Net 5 is back, so there will be some resilience, but I believe St Kilda will come on top.
Yeah. As a St Kilda fan, there are no easy games. But hopefully St Kilda can beat Fremantle.
Well, Brett Ratton's done really well with his lineups and his tactics. I'll be interested to see if Nat Fyfe does actually take his position, because a hamstring injury normally takes at least 2 or 3 weeks to overcome. So will they rush him back in the same way North rushed Ben Cunnington back and he hurt himself? That's always the danger.
Yep. And as we mentioned the last week as well, that Adelaide is acting as a percentage booster. I think that's they're gonna, and West Coast gonna be so happy that they're gonna back. They're probably going back after that, and so I think they're gonna thrash Adelaide Crows. And
they needed that win against Sydney. If West Coast didn't beat Sydney coming into this game against Adelaide, there would have been a lot of question marks about whether they can actually beat Adelaide, because West Coast, you can just tell that they didn't want to be in Queensland. You can just sense that they just want to get this over and done with. But against Adelaide, really, whether they could be whether they're playing at the Gabba or in the Gabba car park, doesn't matter. They should beat Adelaide.
Yeah, this whole question about hubs is really, really interesting. Brisbane won all of their games in the hub, as did Gold Coast. So we'll see how they now acclimatise to their games away from Brisbane and Gold Coast respectively. It's just strange that teams, the Melbourne teams, now are having to play their home games interstate. Yeah. How does it impact on their psychology and their mental well-being? They have to be concerned about being away from friends, family. As we've seen with Richmond players, some of their players are having to stay at home because their partners are about to have babies or have had a child. So all of those particular off-field matters can actually impact on their
performance,
psyche for the matches.
I reckon the psychological aspect that there is no supporters in the stadiums is affecting the game a little bit. It's different, the emotion of the game with and without supporters.
Well, yeah. I mean, how many times do they say, like, the crowd is the extra man, so to speak?
Exactly.
That's probably why Gold Coast did so well, because they're used to not playing with any crowd. Like, there's no one here. That's all right.
That's it. They're used to it.
Yeah, they're used to it. But also at the same time, when it comes to players and being in the hubs and all that sort of stuff, I mean, it's not like they're in another country far, far away with without any forms of communication at all. I mean, I mean, they're in Australia still. Their family is in Melbourne. It's not like they're on the other side of the planet and they can't communicate them with Skype or Zoom or on a telephone or whatever. So I'm not exactly like, I don't want to be mean or anything like that, but I'm not really that empathetic or sympathetic towards them.
Oh, you're harsh, Gabriel. You're a harsh man.
Gabriel, please.
Well, come on. I mean, really. I mean, our family, our relatives, and you guys came here with no family, no relatives, no nothing.
We can probably end it here.
You know what I mean? I think we'll let it there because he's getting a little bit uncomfortable.
But in saying all of that, Gabriel, there was a directive issued to clubs during the week that they'll be limited in terms of how many times they can actually ring their wives and partners. They'll be allowed to communicate via text messaging, but they're limited in terms of how often they can actually ring on the phone, whether they're worried that they'll distract their partners from their training and their concentration on the game. I don't know, but it's interesting that that directive was passed through.
Thank you, guys. Good comments. We will be back on the other side with more of the Multicultural AFL Footy Show. Welcome back. As we look at the rest of round 5, Saturday, Melbourne encountered the Gold Coast at the Giants Stadium. Essendon played North Melbourne from Metricon. Port Adelaide take on GWS Giants at Metricon Stadium, and the Richmond Tigers take on Sydney at the Gabba, while Carlton at Metricon play the Western Bulldogs to wrap up the weekend of footy. The last game will be a huge test for the Doggies. What are your thoughts, Javi?
Yeah, well, it will be a test because they're playing, as I mentioned before as well, they're playing away from home, so they'll be out of their comfort zone. So it will really see that how much impacts all the injuries have on Bulldogs as well, because they're facing few injuries at the moment, and not to mention other teams as well. But it's really gonna take a huge effort from them. to overcome those obstacles and then beat Carlton, because I'm really looking forward to that duel between Cripps and Bontempelli. I hope they are on each other, and then we just see a game coming out of that.
You want to see a shootout, Habir?
Well, you can say that. Yeah, with the others, Melbourne versus Gold Coast, I believe Melbourne, that's a huge time for them to prove that they are something. Otherwise, Gold Coast, I think, as you mentioned before, they just need to get over that Ravel is not playing, and then they have to gel together without him and then perform well.
Who's going to kick Melbourne's goals?
Oh, well, that's a question.
Well, none of their players are.
Well, they've only won 6 out of their last 21 games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a damning statistic.
And I think they haven't even cracked the 50 mark. Is that correct?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've been really bad this season, Melbourne. Simon Goodwin, he's been given a lot of space because of that really amazing season they had 2 seasons ago, and last year they were ultra disappointing, but this time around they've just been really mediocre, really, really woeful. The Gold Coast, with or without Raul, they shouldn't have any problems against Melbourne. Yeah.
They'll have too much run for them, I think.
Well, they'll have too much runs, too much goals, too much marks, too much everything, because Melbourne, they've just been so disjointed.
Yeah.
And their performance against Richmond last week, like I said, I don't know if it was because they were so bad or Richmond was sort of, resurgent. But like you said earlier, with the Bulldogs, Bulldogs and Carlton, that's going to be another great game. And the Bulldogs, if they need to prove that last week wasn't just because North Melbourne were really, really bad, they need to prove that they are back into it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Giants, they're going to have a good test too against Port Adelaide.
Yeah.
They really need to come up with good tactics and the way they play. I think they need to show their speed, and their forwards need to do another good job. Otherwise, Port Adelaide are going to smash them.
They'll be looking to bounce back after a disappointing loss last week.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and Richmond, Sydney, I believe. Sydney, that's easy picking for me at the moment. I think Richmond's gonna win that one. Sydney, I believe it's a neutral ground for both of them, but I don't know actually. Although I know that there is a lot of injury concern with Richmond, but I know that the way they played, we've seen that in the last years as well. Even if there is injury concern, they still sort of come on the top, and everyone sort of gels into their system. If they can play with the system, they're going to beat Sydney easily.
They paid a terrible price for that victory against Melbourne. They've lost Prestia, they've lost potentially Lynch with a broken hand. There's Nankervis out as well. Of course, we have the 2 players that are remaining at home.
Yeah.
Edwards and Bashar Hooley.
Yep.
Cochin with the hamstring injury, so they're missing their best
anyone?
6 or 7, 8 players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think Richmond are going to beat Sydney. I think that Sydney, this is a really good chance for them to win against Richmond, more than ever, because, like you said, like half the team is out. I mean, we might play for Richmond the way because they've got no one there. But also at the same time, I was still not ultra convinced by the way that Richmond performed against Melbourne. Like Richmond did play the old Richmond style and all that, but we did say for the past couple of weeks there was this aura, this countenance about the team, like they weren't hungry, like their hunger was gone. It's like they achieved everything they wanted to do. It's like, well, what do we need to do now?
Yeah.
Well, it's an opportunity for the younger brigade to now come in and refresh and energise the team, because some of these older players perhaps they're lacking motivation, but they can bring in some young players who have been starved of opportunities in the last 2 seasons, the last 3 seasons, because Richmond have just had an incredible list. Their reserves team have been fantastic, so they can bring in Sydney Stack again, they can bring in Noah Bolter, these sort of kids. They can even bring in Marley and Pickett.
Yeah, it could really give those established players a kick up the bum. It's like, well, if this young guy had a really, really good game, it's like, oh, hang on, I need to perform here.
Yep.
Because that didn't happen against St Kilda when there was those 4 changes. This time around, it might happen. But yeah, I'm still on the side of the Swans on this one.
And I believe Simon Goodwin, how he goes with the Melbourne team, that's going to be another factor too, like who he keeps in and who he take out.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next tips. I'm going to pick Geelong, Hawthorn, St Kilda, West Coast, Gold Coast, Essendon, Adelaide, Richmond, and of course the Western Bulldogs again.
Surprise.
That's all we have time for this week, but we'll go out with this clip of champagne footy from the Gabba last Saturday evening.
Mo tried to just mosey on through, and Rockcliffe, as long as it didn't hit Ollie Wines, that's a goal.
Just wouldn't have lost any friends who turned up today, Derm, the Lions.
Oh, no. No, they've been fantastic.
Gil McLaughlin talked about it. This potentially is going to be a huge positive for football in the Northern States with so many teams going up there.
Don't do anything because he's getting dragged back an extra 50 there.
This could well be the one that breaks the drought for Lockie Neal. He's had 9 points in a row.
You'd do that, Lynchy.
Oh, no, I haven't got that layer.
To finish off another great night for the Brisbane Lions, Lockie Neal finds the middle. See, he can do it. In 2020, great to see people filling the stands. And then happy supporters everywhere together as the Brisbane Lions assert their authority over Port Adelaide.
We'll be back next week with more AFL news. You can also watch our show in Adelaide on Channel 44 Friday evening, Aurora-Foxtel TV on Saturdays at midday, or on the NEMBC's YouTube. You are listening to this podcast on the Community Radio Network. The AFL Diversity News in 8 languages can be heard on national multicultural radio stations, and the weekly footy report and tip selections are available from the NEMBC's website. I am Vanessa Gatica.
I'm Harbi Singh.
I'm Gabriel D'Angelo.
And I'm George Gracios.
Thank you and see you next week.